I don't know how people are finding their own version of greatness. Yet, as I say that, I think, who are we to define greatness for someone else right now? I think that is an important question. And I think it is the most ultimate self-reflection question. And you could say, is my ladder against the right or the wrong wall? And I would just say, do you want to be on a ladder? What about the monkey bars? The ladder is just, horizontal instead of vertical.
Think of the people you interact with every day. Would you want to spend a day in a canoe with them? Hi, I'm Nathan Mercero, CEO of Planning Alternatives. We're a disruptive brand in the financial planning space with a point of view that true wealth has nothing to do with money. Growing up in a small town in Canada, I experienced examples of families with money and without. It started me on this journey of understanding wealth and the idea that spending a day in a canoe with someone could be one of the best investments you could make. Join me as I sit down with leaders, entrepreneurs, creatives, rule breakers, and friends to discover their perspective of true wealth. And maybe you'll start to shift yours. I'm delighted today to be joined by Steph Corker. Steph, you have a great canoe story, and I'd love for you to share with listeners, please.
I am delighted to be on your pod, and I was very taken by whoever wrote the copy, and maybe it was you, but the idea of spending a day in a canoe feels like a bit of a lost art to me. And when I heard about the idea of knowing our wealth, of who we spend our days with, and the power of a canoe, I was just struck. I currently live on the west coast of Canada. I am from Toronto. I grew up in the Toronto region. And about 15 years ago, I had the sweet privilege of interviewing with Seth Godin to spend 1 week with him. At the time, it was called the Alternative MBA. And people had flown in from everywhere. And he did this kind of speed interview experience. And you had 5 minutes with Seth Godin. And he said, "Where are you from?" I said, "I'm living in Vancouver and I've flown to New York for this interview." And he said, "The real question is, do you know how to paddle a canoe if you're from Ontario?" And I said, "I know how to paddle a canoe." And he said, "That's all I need to know," and dismissed me. And I didn't know what that meant. And later I learned that Seth Godin, he is not secretive about this, but one of his favorite jobs was growing up as a camp counselor and teaching kids how to canoe. And in fact, during the pandemic, he built his own canoe and he really cherishes his canoe paddles. And this is my longest way of saying thank you for the copy and the design of this podcast, because I really think that paddling a canoe is a lost art. And I'm really proud to tell you that I know how to paddle a canoe. And so I'm pumped to spend a moment of my day today with you in a canoe.
Awesome. Love it. Well, I grew up in New Brunswick, and canoes show up in New Brunswick as well. And I've learned that the most important question for me to ask when I meet people is simply, would I spend a day in a canoe with you? And I believe relational connectedness is incredibly profound. I believe relational connectedness is available. And if we just move our needle, whether it's the needle of curiosity or maybe be a little brave or be an initiator, that we open a door and cross the threshold, that deep connectedness can happen. And that can happen one-on-one or within our culture. So that's my vision for the canoe metaphor, that we take these conversations and inspire listeners to take a step into their metaphorical canoe. And glad that this resonates with you. So, Steph, you've got such an interesting...
Wait, Nathan, am I allowed to ask you a question? I want to know what you pack in the canoe. If I'm coming to spend a day, what are you packing in the canoe?
Well, sunscreen, number one, being my fair skin, red-headed background, my skin will appreciate that. It's always good to snacks that are important to sustain you throughout the day, and some beverages. So those are pretty much the essentials, along with, appropriate weather-related clothes and a sense of direction. So it's not complicated and it's really fun. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, it sounds okay.
Am I missing anything?
I'd be up for the canoe. You just said brave, and I was like, yeah, there's something to be said about packing curiosity and packing brave conversation. And I think when you're in a canoe, you don't really get to just jump out. You really got to stay in the game. You got to stay in the canoe. I mean, you can jump out, but you don't really want to be capsizing. When I'm really into gummy bears right now, like no fun, no drugs, just a pure little hit of sugar. And I think that a gummy bear is like an indication of a brave conversation. So if I have this gummy bear, how can I show up and be a little more brave? And typically just enough sugar that our glucose levels can be stable and we can have honest, fun conversation. So I would just pack gummy bears and you can pack everything else and let's go.
Fair enough. Now, are you using these gummy bears as little kind of like internal cues to motivate you? Like when you see something where you just need a little boost, like what's your application of your gummy bear philosophy?
I think that we're missing a lot of fun, joy, and simplicity in life right now. And I think that we have made it to be like there's an algorithm to win, and everything is like bigger and faster. As it can be a little bit much, Nathan. And sometimes I don't think we need a new chemical formula. The gummy bear has been around for a very long time. I think a little bit of sugar is not so bad for us. And I think it's just a reminder to me that gummy bears are these chubby little bite-sized nuggets of joy. And I think we could all use some chubby bite-sized nuggets of joy.
I find that inspirational. and maybe one day hope that I can attain that gummy bear status.
All I can tell you is I've been on a prowl for the world's best gummy bears and I have found them. So I will send you the link and everyone just go buy a 5-pound bag, give some to a friend. Before you have conversation, there's nothing quite like passing your friend a gummy bear and saying, this is a tough conversation and I'm about to be really brave. Boom. Like the door has just opened. Everything you need to know about feeling scared, about not telling the truth, gone. And you, in return, in exchange, have offered them a gummy bear. I think I'm a genius. That is everything I know about leadership development, Nathan.
I think we're having a breakthrough here. So help me understand why the voices in my head around this, in this scenario where we're talking about having a tough conversation, why do my voices kind of spin around and get in my way? And maybe just say, oh, this conversation is not even possible when I know that, a gummy bear could just open the door and everything's okay on the other side. Like where's that bridge? How do you help people cross the bridge from all that chatter in our heads or hesitation to here's the gummy bear moment?
I'm not a neuroscientist and I only learn from listening to a lot of podcasts and reading books. And I'm certain there are true experts in the world. I only will be a self-proclaimed gummy bear expert that says the idea of like 10 years of therapy to unpack like father-daughter trauma might feel like more than 10 years I have right now in this moment. And it would feel way more accessible to just say, here's a gummy bear, and I want you to just quiet the voices in your head that tell me that right now this conversation isn't possible. Because from my gummy bear to your gummy bear, I'm showing up today to have a conversation that we haven't had before. Are you up for it? And if I give you a gummy bear, it's going to be hard for you to say no. Just for a split second, that voice has an opportunity to be quiet and to see either a conversation or perspective from a different place. And this is what I mean about canoeing. We've just made it so flipping complicated. And I get trauma with a capital T or a lowercase t. And I get that we all know what we want. And when we're not getting it, we should just jump out of the canoe and there's a better option and there's a speedboat coming. But the speedboat's going to run out of gas and something's going to happen. And like the grass isn't greener.
Now, gardening is a topic that you have pursued. What's the garden story? So we're focusing on the letter G today. It's like a Sesame Street episode.
I'm here for it. Greatness, gummy bears and gardens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. I really like gardening and I recently took up gardening And I took up gardening, actually following our G's, inspired by a beautiful man who's in his 80s. His name is Gay Hendricks. And Gay Hendricks is a gorgeous therapist, author, guru of many sorts. And he talks a lot about our upper limit problem, Nathan, and how we like hit this feeling of like too much abundance. And then we freak out and we need a gummy bear. And I have gardened in my life with an upper limit problem because I thought I'll never be around enough to care for it. It's too much work. I don't really know how to garden. And so I would have like small containers. And then I moved to a little town just south of Whistler, BC. I'm in the mountains and I joined the gardening club. And this is a bunch of 70-year-old wackadoodle ladies that just talk about their gardens all day long. So I'm going to learn from these people. There's really something special to learn from a different generation, and I'm here for it. And I went from my upper limit problem of just that small container in the side of my porch to ripping up my entire front lawn, ordering more soil than I want to admit, and laying down huge boxes. And I've just made my front lawn a community garden. And it was a massive upper limit endeavor because I freaked out. It was way too much work. It was like the project that was in over your head. But I tell you this story because to me, it was a lesson in leadership that I can't quite get at work. It's not quite the same. It's never going to be on my resume. You asked for letter G, so we're riffing on gardens, but otherwise they probably wouldn't lead with, hey, Nathan, I'm a new gardener and I ripped up my front lawn and I planted a community garden. You might not really care, but I care. And I think that learning how to be a part of a community, a contribution to a community, it's brought me more joy than I know. And I'm growing a pumpkin patch right now, and all the kids on the street can't wait for Halloween, and they're going to come and get their pumpkin. And I feel like my life's work is pretty locked up. It's too special to comment otherwise. I have a pumpkin patch. Come on.
How many bears a pumpkin patch? Doesn't get much better than that. So I'm going to put another letter G on the table and in the conversation of greatness. And you focus on leadership development. And many leaders have this belief system that to be great, I have to be number one, number two, number three. I've got to have all these perfect things in place on my resume. Help me understand your version of or interpretation of greatness in the context of our conversation in helping leaders.
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. And I want to give a nod to a dear friend who said he's an executive at a large apparel company on the Pacific Northwest. And he said, my fear right now is that as leaders, we are missing greatness. And I was like, whoa, tell me more. And he said, the goals are high, the goalposts are higher, and there's always more to be done. There's always more to do. And so right now we're in this era, this pandemic of missing greatness. And my heart just sank because I thought, gosh, if we miss greatness, then what? And I guess that's the antithesis to your question. And the way I would answer the question is, how are you seeking or searching for greatness? And I, again, don't think that greatness gets to show up on your resume necessarily. I don't think greatness gets to show up on a scorecard or a performance review. I don't even think like a board of directors is going to give a hoot about leadership greatness. And again, maybe rhetorically here, I'm taking this one in circles, but I'm like, how are you developing the curiosity, the skill, the desire to breed like self-inflicted greatness? And how are you searching for more greatness? And I wish I knew the answer. I don't. I think it's staying in a canoe and not in a speedboat.
So are you observing people that you work with seeking greatness? And do you kind of have this perspective that says, not sure if that your canoe's pointed in the right direction? Because many times, as the saying goes, we spend time and energy climbing the corporate ladder only to find the ladder's leaning against the wrong wall. and it's an outcome or an effect or an impact that we thought we would find fulfillment in, that we would find happiness in. It's the, if I do this, then that, then I'll be happy. And many times there's a void. So is that observable in your world? And how do you help people find their greatness that's really within?
Gosh, a really great question. I wish I had something profound to say that I do. And the truest answer is I don't. I don't know how people are finding their own version of greatness. Yet, as I say that, I think, who are we to define greatness for someone else right now? I think that is an important question. And I think it is the most ultimate self-reflection question. And you could say, is my ladder against the right or the wrong wall? And I would just say, do you want to be on a ladder? What about the monkey bars? The ladder is just, horizontal instead of vertical. So I guess I would really ask the question back to say, how are you cultivating greatness in your life? And for me, I would say I've invested in community, and I care a lot about how I move my body and how I show up, and about the energy that I bring into a space or into a conversation. To me, greatness is when the times are really tough, who are you? And I could have answers for you for that, for me personally. And I think it's very different for everyone. And I would never expect it to be the same. And it's not right or wrong. It's not binary. But I think the question to ask is, are you okay with your level of greatness? Do you feel good about your investment in your own version of greatness? And if you don't, what are you doing about it? That is the question.
When did you
with the gummy bear?
I love it. When did you find yourself stuck on your path to greatness? And what did you do to navigate that?
I would say most recently, and by most recently in the last 11 years. 11 years ago, I wanted to chase some Ironman dreams and race as a professional triathlete. I wanted to travel the world, and I wanted to do really meaningful work on purpose. And I was hopeful that I could work for a female leader. I couldn't find those things in the hot minute that I was looking. And so I started the Corker Collective. And for 10 years, I ran a human capital consulting firm that I could look at and say, I was obsessed with greatness. And yeah, I just find me an entrepreneur that has survived the last 10 years. I think they're great in their own way.
I think there's a lot in the entrepreneurial journey that makes one question what greatness means. And sometimes it's simply getting through the next 30 minutes and coming back to center. For my point of view is the questions that we ask to ourselves specifically are the most critical exercises and steps that we can take, because sometimes we think that the answer is outside of us or always outside of us when the answer is in. And as a friend of mine says, freedom's an inside job. And if we really want to find greatness, if we want to find that freedom, we have to go inside ourselves to ask the hard questions or look in the mirror or simply recognize that the answer of a gummy bear is right in front of us. And all I have to do is pick it up and act accordingly. So we've covered gummy bears, gardens, and greatness. I love the area of connectivity. It's one of the 6 areas that we talk about for what true wealth means. And we have a true wealth assessment on our website that people can take and find out where they are on their true wealth journey. But the relational connectedness with people is really what feeds and develops us individually. And it's hard to do that, really hard to do that on an island. We need others. When you're 80 years old, many, many years down the road, what do you hope to be doing?
It's so wonderful that you asked that question, because 80 feels like half my lifetime at this moment in time. So 80 feels far out, but I have really been meditating on the 60-year-old version of myself. So we'll say 60 plus or minus 2 decades. And I share that because I this year, I started thinking, what does 60-year-old Steph want to do? Who is she in the world? And a lot of how I have cultivated community, and I have a small home on a little plot of land. I have a sauna in the backyard. I spent hours tinkering in this garden and forming relationships with community. And this might sound really silly to you, Nathan, but it's the act of closing my eyes and being in a body that is strong enough to get through the day and strong enough to still garden. And I'm wearing overalls and my hair is in a braid and my hands are blistered and dirty. And I can still lift heavy stuff at the gym, and my dog might listen. I imagine having a sweet dog that listens. My Bernedoodle Bernie does not do that right now. And my point is, there isn't a lot in my life right now that I hope isn't the same when I'm 60 years old. And I will tell you that I'm really into intelligent mind journals. They're based out of the UK. I think they've done a beautiful job asking questions. And it's something that I journal on often, of how the person I am becoming today, how will that contribute to the 60-year-old version of myself? And I'm really at peace with how I'm spending my days and contributing to that version of myself.
Sounds like that you've tapped into your true wealth journey pretty clearly.
I think I am the wealthiest only because I am maybe the silliest. I think that joy is wealth, and I'm excited to learn more about my true wealth scorecard. So there's more here, but there's more than dollars that come with wealth is what I'm gathering from you, and I'm here for it.
I want to thank you today for taking the time as we highlighted the letter G, and I'm inspired by how you live. So all the best. Keep up the great work.
Come to my garden anytime. Part of my vision is that friends will come over and I'll have something ready for you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review. To discover what wealth means to you, please take our assessment at planningalt.com.